Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, or possibly even good morning. This is a new webinar in the new webinar series that we're doing, which I'm really excited about. And today's webinar is looking at Extempore, which is a tool which helps students with their speaking practice and also gives teachers the opportunity of giving feedback as well. Today is the 22nd of July, 2020. And our presenter today is Sam Slagle. I will be looking at the chat, hopefully asking lots of questions to Sam, putting him through his paces, and he's going to be demonstrating all about Extempore. Complete transparency before we start, I've not actually used Extempore myself, so I'm a newbie looking at this with fresh eyes myself. So I'm really looking forward to hearing all about Extempore and how it can be used particularly in our remote learning context that we find ourselves in the moment for speaking and for feedback. So you're very welcome to join us, Sam. Thank you ever so much for agreeing to do this. We also have Thomas Moore as well from Extempore, who will be monitoring the chat along with myself. Yeah, hi to Thomas as well. So let's go for it. We've got the next sort of hour and a half or so looking at Extempore, and I'm really looking forward to this. So over to you, Sam, and thank you ever so much for agreeing to do this.
Yes, no, thank you, Joe, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you to everyone else attending. I'm really looking forward to sharing more about Extempore with you. So Extempore it means spontaneous in Latin. So I say Extempore. I've heard many say Extempore. There's really no right or wrong way to say that, but the spontaneous piece will be an important part that I'll touch on a few times throughout the presentation. Most of this will be focused on the product in action, but we're going to start from a high level. I'm assuming most people here aren't too familiar with Extempore. So I will give you kind of a little history on where we came from, why we created this in the first place, and then why it is becoming such an impactful tool during this remote and hybrid learning time. So again, my name is Sam Slagle. I do lead the customer success team here at Extempore. So we started building this back in 2016. Really what our goal was at that time was to solve the logistical challenge that language educators face when trying to assess students for oral assessments. And our founder, she is a Spanish instructor at a local college here. So her story was she had 100 students. It would take up to 3 days of class time in order for her to assess those 100 students, provide them with feedback, and really just get the task done. So with Extempore, we've combined both spontaneity while also being asynchronous, which helps save a lot of that time. So what that's now turned into for her is about a 30-minute task or assessment where she is collecting all those responses from the students and then grading, providing feedback that is left behind in a portfolio for the students to review and see their growth. So the story, it's shifted a little bit now post-COVID, but still very similar. So I actually sat in on a newer educator utilizing Extempore as soon as COVID hit. She wanted to show me how she was assessing students synchronously via Zoom. So I sat in for the hour-long class. She assessed about 5 of her students out of the 20. And we kind of hit the drawing board on how Extempore could be used for really hybrid or blended learning in the same fashion. So fast forward the next week, joined her class again. At one point, she just explained the instructions to her students that they're now going to take this assessment on Extempore. She just bumped them all out into a waiting room. And then in about 15 minutes, all those students had rejoined the class while she was doing spot checking just to make sure that everything was submitted successfully, and then proceeded with the lesson from there. So let me go into the next slide. So we started as the speaking practice and assessment app. We have added quite a few more features that has expanded the capabilities of what is possible, where it doesn't necessarily need to be just for speaking anymore. It could be written responses, listening comprehension, and then we recently added multiple choice as an option as well. So with that, I've seen a lot of people starting to do true and false questions at the same time. So a few things at a high level to touch on. So Extempore, it is spontaneous, which is unique for something that is asynchronous. So it means those responses are occurring without or with very limited preparation from the students, which ensures that they do not really have the ability to cheat, over-prepare, or pull in a friend. It is also interpersonal, which is communication between people. So with that spontaneity, Extempore really mimics the interpersonal interactions asynchronously so that you still can save that time. I know I've said asynchronous a few times already, but again, that is a big differentiator on a lot of other recording tools. So it does not require that the teacher is available at the same time. And that is really the big time saver, even before all this remote and hybrid learning had started to occur, where it was saving a lot of time in class as well.
Sam, sorry, can I just interrupt just quickly, if that's okay? So a couple of people in the chat are saying that the sound is sounding truncated. That's not an issue for me at all, personally. You're coming in absolutely fine. Can I just ask, though, are you wearing headphones? Because some people are talking about an echo.
I am not. Let me.
Do you have any headphones, just to see if that makes a difference? But some people are saying the sound is fine. For me, the sound is fine, but some people are saying it's truncated. It might be the individual people that are finding that. It might be your internet connection, possibly. I don't know. But if you, yeah, okay, let's carry on. Let's see if the echo is there for some of you. But certainly, if you're wearing headphones, that should eliminate that issue. Thanks ever so much. We're really enjoying it so far. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And is this any better with the headphones now?
Yeah, you sound absolutely fine to me.
Okay.
Some people are saying that your
through.
voice is a bit broken. Oh, okay. So now people are saying that much better. That's great. Okay. So thank you ever so much, everyone in the chat, for giving that feedback. I think we're good to go. Thanks ever so much, Sam.
Yes, no problem. No problem. So in regards to being a formative tool, really what formative is just understanding where current work or knowledge is in relation to that goal. So in terms of high stakes, that is kind of our bread and butter while still being able to do the practice leading up to that. So summative as well. So it's allowing teachers to evaluate student learning at the end of an instructional unit by comparing it against some standards or benchmarks. These are oftentimes high stakes environments as well. So we are agnostic in two different ways. So one, Extempore can work for any type of language as well as right to left. It does accept any type of characters as well. And then Extempore does work on any type of device, whether it is a computer, tablet, or on a smartphone, where students have the ability to download the Extempore mobile app. We are secure. Extempore is FERPA, COPA, and HIPAA compliant. It's a great way to collaborate. One way to collaborate is the ability to share and receive assessments with your colleagues, allowing you to maximize that content that's being created, as well as expose students to different voices, different accents, without necessarily needing to do all of that work on your own. Also related to being collaborative, we do have the ability to have group activities. Those are still asynchronous. So very similar to if you're recording a voice memo on your cell phone, sending it to somebody and receiving a voice memo back, because they are always hearing that previous response as they go into theirs. It does sound like an ongoing dialogue as you grade and provide any feedback. And lastly, it's very user-friendly. So because it was built by language educators for language educators, there's really no need for you to navigate through pointless features that aren't necessarily intended for teaching or acquiring a language.
We just had a question in the chat, Sam,
So
while you're having some liquid there. Someone's just asked, does it work for Chinese?
Yes, absolutely.
Lovely, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so we do often get asked or compared to a lot of presentational apps out there. The one I like to use as the example is Flipgrid. Most people have heard of it. A lot of people have tried it before. So with Flipgrid, students do have as much time as they need to prepare, meaning that those responses are presentational by definition there, because they can look up an answer, they can go and ask a friend. It is still an outstanding tool for what it does, as well as allowing the collaboration. But we are very different in that sense. So with Extempore, teachers control the students' prep time and the response time, meaning that those responses are spontaneous as well as interpersonal, which is really the only way to truly assess the student's current knowledge, opposed to how well they can look something up and respond. So put simply, Extempore can be done in 3 different steps. So first, the teacher creates the question for the students to respond to. Those questions can be positioned as either a video, audio, text, or multiple choice. Next, you have the option to allow students to have multiple attempts, which is great for practice as well as pronunciation, so that students can recite their response, listen to it, and re-record if needed. Otherwise, you can do a single attempt, which would be best used for a high stakes type of environment. And then again, controlling the time to prepare and the time to respond. The last step, once you've collected those responses from students, is right in line. You can grade, provide feedback, which then creates that portfolio of work for each student to review. And as I mentioned before, the app is available on the Apple App Store as well as Google Play. That is the student portal. So in terms of educators, you would be mainly working with Extempore from the desktop using either Google Chrome or Firefox. Extempore is integrated with most major LMSs. If you don't see yours on the list, it's very possible we could get that done in about a week. So we do handle any integrations based on request. And the biggest benefit, I would say right now, is that those grades seamlessly transfer from Extempore into your LMS without the need to export or import that information. And now is the time for the live demonstration. So give me 1 second to switch my screen over. Go. And Joe, I just want to make sure you're seeing my screen with my mouse moving now.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wrote in the chat, I'm sure lots of UK teachers in particular would love integration with Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams with Extempore. And apologies for mispronouncing it at the beginning as well. But yeah, I think that would be most welcome. I'm sure people would agree in the chat. People are looking for, integration within Classroom and Microsoft Teams. So if that was a possibility to add that, I think that would go down really well. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. So with all these other LMSs that we have integrated with, they follow the same LTI standards is what it's called. So with all of those, it has taken us just a week. With Google Classroom, it is a little different. That is on our list, but it's not the same type of just pull a template and then integrate as we were able to with some of those other LTIs. That is something I would expect here within the next year.
That's fantastic. So just to be clear then, so it would work with Google Classroom, but not sort of like integrated within Google Classroom, but presumably you can share the resources via a link in Google Classroom, but the integration of adding in sort of class lists or rosters, as I think you say in the States, is not there yet, but would be hopefully in the next year, as that seems to be on your roadmap.
Yes, absolutely. Great. Yes.
Lovely, thank you.
You bet. And so to start this off, I'm going to start from scratch. We're going to create a class assessment. We'll create a set of questions. And then once I get to that step, I'm going to use the class that I already have pre-created. And then that's where I'll allow any participants who want to interact with Extempore as a student to basically mimic what blended learning would look like while going through and responding to some of those answers prior to going into the grading and providing the feedback. So if it's your first time using Extempore, step 1 is to create your class. You can have as many classes as you would like. And then the way to look at Extempore is like a Russian doll, because your class is your big doll, open that up, your assessments would be the smaller doll inside, and then you have the questions inside of each assessment. The reason why it's best to look at it that way is because you do have the ability to copy and send a class to a colleague, which then all of the assessments follow, or you can do that at the assessment level by sharing an assessment where only the questions would follow for that. So we'll just name this one sample class 4.
That's lovely, Sam. While you're doing that, we've had another question about Microsoft Teams in particular. Is the same sort of time frame the true for Microsoft Teams as it is with Google Classroom, e.g. in the next year or so?
So Google Classroom has been the more requested one. I know a lot of schools are shifting to all Microsoft. So Thomas, if you don't mind just taking a note on that, and then we can bring that to the development team. As far as I know, we haven't planned for it, but that would definitely make sense. And something I will be sharing later on in this demonstration is we do have a public facing ideas portal for our users, because we just develop based on requests. So that's something that you guys will all have access to either vote on existing ideas, submit new ones that we might be missing, just to help us prioritize what is most important to you.
Right, so thank you for clarifying that, but can I just be very clear then? You can use this in relation to creating links and what have you, which you can share via Microsoft Teams. You just don't have the integration at the moment, is that right?
Correct, yes. It's just no integration in terms of grades feeding over. But with Extempore, it's different than a lot of other online tools where you're sending a link each time a new activity is available. Where with us, it's just rostering those students one time or enrolling them. And then once they're enrolled, they have an account, they log in, they have access to any and all assessments that are available. So in terms of how you would incorporate that in Microsoft Teams or some of those other tools that we're not fully integrated with yet, is just adding an activity, letting students know that something will be available on that date.
Right. Okay. So essentially what you have to do is you have to then add the class list that you could say take from Teams into Extempore. Can you do like a bulk add, or do you have to add people individually?
Yes, you can do a bulk add in terms of importing lists, so you can upload a roster.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can have a share link as well, which can be shared, and then students can create their own account, which then connects to that class.
Okay. With the account,
you do have the two different options.
That's brilliant. With the account, does it have to be an email, or can it be a code or an email, or both for students?
So they would be entering an email. It does not require a unique email though. So like, for example, if you are just uploading a roster and you're concerned about any student data, which all it is their name, email, username and password, you can be using just your teacher email and just uploading basically usernames and passwords for those students.
Okay. So essentially, so the teacher can be in complete control of all the accounts, and if a student forgets their password, then the teacher can reset that and those sorts of things. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we almost have a mini IT feature where teachers can provide a new password on the spot to any of their students right there on the list, and then just send it right back to the students so they can get in.
Okay, that's excellent, because I'm sure lots of teachers, either watching this live or the recording, will be asking those sorts of questions. So that's really helpful to clarify that. That's brilliant. But if you had like inbuilt integration within Classroom or Teams, I think that would be even better. But the fact that you can set up class lists with a bulk add, and the teacher can manage the passwords and all the rest of it, I think that's great. Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for clarifying that. That's really, really helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. And then one other thing with Google, we do have the Google single sign-on. So that is also a possibility for students as they do create their accounts. So,
lovely. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. So for this first one, I'm going to do a speaking assessment because we really differentiate ourselves with this kind of high stakes environment. That's what I'll build out as the example. And then when I go into the one that I pre-created, you'll see all of the different types of assessments that would be possible. So going down the line, the start time, that relates to when it's made available to students. So if this was scheduled out into the future, students cannot click in, see any information about this activity until that date and time hits. Due time, for that one, students can still complete outside of the due time. It will be labeled in red as late so that you can handle the grade accordingly. Going down the line, the individual assessment type is definitely the more heavily used. We do also have the group as well. I will go into a group example as soon as I get through creating this first individual one.
So in terms of a speaking assessment, if this were truly a high stakes assessment, we recommend using video for that. That way you know it is the right student, they're not reading from a script. However, if you do have students that get very anxious, that is a good reason for the audio. What we've seen is that it really decreases that student speaking anxiety because they're not seeing themselves on the screen. Very similar to if they were doing a face-to-face assessment with an instructor or with other peers watching, then that anxiety can really build up. So I will flip this to video for this example, and then we will show all parameters. So description is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to say grade it just so we have some text entered. Publishing the grades immediately. The default is yes. This relates to any grades or feedback. So if we leave this as yes and we grade one student's question, that'll be made available to that student to review immediately. Now, because this is high stakes, we don't want one student seeing their grades and feedback before others. So that's where we would say no, giving us the control of when we publish those grades for each student to see individually. And then because this is graded, we are going to say for a numeric score. And now this is a customizable rubric. You have up to 5 different slots for criteria. And then you can also add an additional description, which helps align with any of those national standards that I know are important for a lot of educators. So I'll just plug in a few examples here. Say vocab. And we'll do pronunciation. Within the next 2 weeks as well, you will have the ability to save the rubric that was built. And then you will have a drop down right here where you can just pull those in for any other assessments that you're building out. Prior to that being available, it was still pretty easy to copy assessments. And then obviously that rubric would copy over, but we're always trying to make things as efficient as possible. So now the last step here would be the time limitations. So this is what allows you to control that environment and ensure that responses from students are spontaneous. So first, I'm going to limit how much time the student has to review the question. For this, I'm just going to do a very short 15 seconds. This can be however long or short you would like. And then I'm also going to limit how much time the student has to respond. We'll give them 1 minute. And then we're not going to allow them to re-record if this was that high stakes type of assessment. If you do start using Extempore after this, we don't recommend formatting it like this for your very first assessment for students. That way you're kind of easing them into how the prompt to response actually works while giving them multiple attempts so that they're not risking locking themselves out, which is a possibility when you do set this up as a single attempt. All right, so we are now on step 3 to start questions. So I'm not going to give the most real examples. As I mentioned, I do have one built out that has some better examples in it. But for this, I'm going to give you more of the different types that could be incorporated for these questions. So first we'll say Q1. And then in terms of the media prompts, when it says file, that would be uploading an existing file that is saved to your computer. That might be a video, audio, or image. Otherwise, video and audio here would be our video or audio recorder. So I'm going to record an authentic video to start. And a lot of people, especially during COVID, they actually used this the first time to just ask students to introduce themselves in their native language and then explain how you learn best. That way we can always refer back to that, almost getting to know your students asynchronously. So I'll give an example like that here. So, hey students, we'll be using Extempore this semester. Please introduce yourself in your native language and explain how you learn best. So we will stop and use that. And then I'm just going to save and add a new question. Here we go. And then in 2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine a file upload, which will be an image, with our audio recorder. That way we can give students a graphic while giving them more of a listening comprehension exercise at the same time. So I will upload a file. And now I'll just give some additional instructions by opening up the audio recorder. So please tell me who Mariana is speaking with and who Juana is speaking with, and then go into detail on what those two individuals are wearing. So we will stop and use that. At any point, we do have that opportunity to add additional text as well. I will give an example with just text on this next one here. So now this might just be a pronunciation exercise. So pronounce the words below from our lesson last week. And then just put some dummy text in there. Again, I will show a better example there. Just want to show how this would be created. One thing to note in terms of when you are adding timers to your assessment, you do have the ability to override those timers. With a question like this, where I'm not including any video or audio, this timer review is going to begin as soon as the student enters the question. For questions that do have video and audio included, then this timer review will begin as soon as the student has listened to that entire prompt. So something to keep in mind as you are organizing those, but it is nice to have the ability to adjust per question in terms of the time. So we will save and add one more. For this last one, it'll be a multiple choice question. So let's say Q4. And then we're going to make this multiple choice. And then let's see. So I'm just going to give some audio. So what animal is perro? We'll stop and use that. For multiple choice, these ones will be graded automatically because you will have already determined what the correct response will be. So we'll just say 1 point for this one, and then we will begin adding our choices. So different than a lot of other multiple choice systems, you do have the same ability to be adding video, audio, or uploading those files for every single question, as well as every single response. So great for listening comprehension. Otherwise, again, I've seen a lot of people starting to use this as multiple choice, or I'm sorry, as true or false. So with this multiple choice, this feature was just released about 2 weeks ago. So for this one, we'll upload a file. Say cat first, obviously not the correct answer. So we'll just save that choice, and then we'll continue uploading our other options. So there's our perro. We will say that is the correct answer and save. And put one more here. And we're always trying to do our best to make sure students do not have that ability to cheat. So even with multiple choice, even though I'm putting these 1, 2, 3, they will display for students differently. So the picture of the dog might be choice 1 for one student, might be choice 3 for the other, just making it harder for them to relay what the correct answer might be to their peers.
We've got a couple of questions in the chat, Sam, if that's okay, if I can put them directly to you. So the first question is, can the student listen to the audio several times before the timer starts?
If you allow multiple attempts, then the students can listen to it as much as they want. However, if you allow multiple attempts, then you do not have the time to review. So that would be one thing to keep in mind. Before the summer is over, we will be adding the ability to, rather than just single attempt or multiple, which is unlimited, to determine if you might want them to have 2 or 3 attempts on that.
Right. Okay. So
which then would open the door for them to be able to listen time while then responding again.
Great. So when you set up the exercise, that's when you choose whether you want it to be a single response or multiple. And that, yeah, that's brilliant. Okay. That's really good. Thank you. The next question was, can you use the override function to allow time for specific students who have special educational needs, please?
Yeah, so good question. And so on that one, because the students in your class have access to all assessments, our recommendation is just to copy that class and have a separate one for any of those students that do have those special needs, because then you can just continue using the copy assessment feature while then adjusting those time for that class. Because as it stands today, you're not necessarily adjusting it per student. It is for that entire class.
Right. So you would set at the moment, you'd set the configuration for the whole class, but you could then copy the same class again, but just change the configuration for an individual child. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So you copy that class, and then you just have any students that have those special ed needs enrolled in that second class, which might be labeled something slightly different, just so you know that that is the class that maybe needs extended time on each one of those assessments or activities.
Right. And then, so when you assign that task to the whole class, which will include some children with special educational needs, will that be straightforward, or do you have to, I mean, I don't think we've covered how to assign the activity to the class yet, but would that be straightforward to, if you're essentially got two separate exercises which you're assigning to different students? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let me hit next, and I think this is actually going to clarify.
You'll be able to cover
on this
that.
next
Okay,
page
that's lovely. If it's okay, if we
right now I have
we've got quite a few
class
more
4.
questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
Right.
Wait,
So
let me
okay,
finish answering that one, Joe, because it's right here.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that
I'm
first. Then
sharing
we'll go.
this
Yeah, that's
class
fine.
link with.
No problem.
Yep. So this might be my special ed class that needs extended time. I'm sharing this class link with them. And then I have my other class that I'm sharing the class link with for all the students that do not need that extended time. So all it is a different link that they're connected to a different class for those needs.
Perfect. That's really helpful. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Lovely. Okay. A few other questions. So we've got the question. Let me just have a look. Yeah. Can you amend the timings for each individual child? Is that the same answer in a way? I think that's the same answer, isn't it? Can you amend the timings for each individual child? So that would be the
same answer, right?
Yeah, same answer, right? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So do the students know they're in a different class? I suppose they wouldn't if you're just sending them a link. But then you would just how would you actually do that in a sort of a real situation? Let's say you're using Google Classroom or what have you. Would you just send? Would you have to say, I don't know, a Google document with the two links there and say, right, so team A, you go for link 1, team B, you go for link 2. Is that how you would do it?
That's how you would do it. And rather than that being separate classes, that could just be separate assessments within the same class, with the expectation being team 1 completes this assessment, team 2 completes the other.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Hopefully that's really clear for everyone in the chat. Yeah. So so we've had the question, do the students know they're in a different class? So in the way that we talked about that, it's essentially two links. So I think that's a really nice way of looking at it. So you've got, like, as you say, task A for this group, task B for this group. I think that's fine. I think those are all the questions. Oh, in relation to the criterion that you were talking about, you said that you could add 2 criterion. If you wanted to, 2 criteria, should I say? If you wanted to add another criterion, is that easy to do?
Yes, and you're referring to the rubric with that question?
Yeah, in the rubric, because for GCSE, so the exam system we have in the UK, you would probably want to have more than, there we are. So you just click add criterion. So yeah, that answers that question. So you presume you can have as many criterion as you want. Is that right?
Up to 5.
Up to 5. Well, I think that should be plenty for everyone. Okay, I think I'm right in saying that's all the questions so far. This is great. Thank you. And hopefully, you're enjoying the whole sort of like lots of questions all at the same time. But it's a good sign, I think, if people have lots of questions, and the fact that you can answer them there and then is just brilliant. And Thomas is doing a great job in the chat as well, helping support as well. So this is great stuff, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Awesome. So let me just cancel out of this one. And then I realized midway through creating that, I was logged into another account on my other screen. So let me just get back into my primary one here. So summer. And then at this point, guys, what I'm about to do here is I'm going to share the class link for rebuilding the MFL and EAL Classroom in the chat. So anybody who would like to interact with Extempore as a student, feel free to do so. So I'm going to copy this link. Before I share it in the chat, I'll just show you guys what you can expect to see when you open that up. So once you click on the link, it will bring you here. What you can do from here is just create a new account. And then if you do plan on using this in the future, I would recommend just filling out the form on the right rather than connecting any Google or Apple account, just because this will be a student account that you're creating. And feel free to just plug in demo@demo.com for the email. There's really no need to use any of your personal information. It's really just creating a dummy account so that you can interact as a student. So I will paste that in there. And then for anybody who does want to grab that, create the account, I'll start going a little slower here just so I'm not getting too far ahead for anyone who will be doing that. Upon me refreshing this page, which I'll do in a minute or two, I will be able to see anybody who has started to enroll. So this is where your class roster will live. And then what I mentioned earlier, where teachers do have that ability to change a password on the spot for students, that would be right here, where they can just manage the user, provide them with a new password right here, and then let the student know so that they can get into the account. So just a great way to make sure one student isn't slowing down other students in the class, especially before COVID and things were happening in class time. But I'm sure a similar situation can happen when you might be doing something on Zoom. So close that out. Let me refresh just to see if anybody has an account yet. Okay, not yet. And feel free to continue doing that. What I'm going to do now is just view as a student. Everybody would have this ability within their instructor account. Oh, I'm going back and showing how to log in. Yes. So in terms of the login, let me go back one page. So you should see that welcome, you're enrolling for this class. So however you guys name your classes, that's what students will see. So they're aware of which class they're enrolling in. And then for anybody who's giving this a try, you'll just create a new Extempore account. And then again, I recommend filling out the form on the right rather than doing the Google or Apple, just so that doesn't conflict if you do end up creating an instructor account in the future here. And for the email, feel free to just put demo@demo.com and no need to put the real name or anything else there. Okay. So I'm going to come back in. Once you guys do fully connect to that class, I'm going to click view a student. This would be the next screen that you will be led to. And then this also would address the question from, I think I saw earlier in the chat, where if students are enrolled in multiple classes, this is what that would look like. So they have a landing page with any and all classes that they are enrolled in, and then they can just drill in to view what activities are available. So from here, the student would have 3 different folders, one for any active activities, one for any past due, which again, they can still complete, but those will be labeled as late so that you can handle that accordingly. Any future activities, students can see that they're upcoming when they will be made available. They cannot click in or see any information about what those questions will be. And then the completed folder, that basically turns into that ever-growing portfolio of work, which will have the grades and feedback that was provided by you, as well as the student's response so that they can always go back and review. So I'll go through some of these. If anybody is completing them by yourself, feel free to just mute me while you're doing so, just so it's not picking up my audio in your response, as you'll basically be seeing firsthand exactly what I'm going to be going through for anyone who is not going through that activity themselves. I see that question for multiple choice.
Yeah, so one of the questions in the chat from Laura is, which is a classic teacher question: does the computer mark the multiple choice answers, or does the teacher have to mark everything? Love it.
Yeah, so it does grade automatically because you have already determined what the correct answer would be. So I'll give an example of that right here with my multiple choice example. So we'll come in, listen to the audio, and select the image that relates. So now that I do have my headset in, I don't believe the audio is going to come across. Let me know if it does. Are you hearing that still or not?
No, we can't hear that.
No, okay. And I do have share computer sound on, so I guess with the headset that just isn't going to work.
I'm not sure, but we can get the idea. That's fine.
Yeah. So for that one, I didn't, the pero example, I said gato. So now I'll come down and I will select the gato and submit. Congratulations, this is complete. We'll go back to our assessments. And now that one is going to appear in the students completed assessments section. And they can see that it has already been graded. So this is what all the other ones would look like once grades and feedback has been provided. With this one, it shows immediately with that grade displaying. So I'll show later how the student goes in to review those. Another question?
I'm not sure if someone put their microphone on by mistake,
Oh,
but
I mean, they might have
okay.
been trying to mute me and then unmute themselves.
I'm not sure. But another idea that comes to mind is in relation to the images that you're using. Am I right in thinking that you have to upload those from, say, your computer? There isn't like an inbuilt Creative Commons Google image search at the moment?
At the moment, there is not. So it would be something that is saved to your computer.
So, I mean, just as an idea on your roadmap, I would suggest it would be really handy to have some sort of image search, which is obviously royalty free, which would allow you to find these images quickly and easily rather than having to find them from somewhere else, download them to your computer and then upload them onto Extempore. I think that'd be a really handy thing. And another thought as well is if there is time, it would be nice to show how to create a multiple choice question from scratch, if that's possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I did show that once already. I can go back and show that one more time as well, though.
Okay,
because that was the example I gave with the pero, and then I had uploaded the 3 images.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. So someone's just asked in the chat, excuse my ignorance, but how do I mute Sam? I don't think that's actually possible. I think that you'd have to mute yourself. So I think what we'll do is, if it's okay, if you can be like the model student and then so you can be like the teacher and the student, if that's possible, simply so then everyone can then just sort of watch, as it were, because I think it's going to be very difficult for everyone to sort of be demo students, if that's all right. I can see as well, we've got a question. How does the pronunciation one work? Is it graded by the teacher or the app? Could you address that question, Sam, if that's okay?
Yeah, so that is something that would be graded by the teacher. And then that's where you're also providing the feedback at the same time. So once I go through and respond to all these, that's where we'll go back to the teacher portal and I'll show what that grading tab looks like. As it stands today, the multiple choice is the only one that's automatically going to be graded.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. That's really clear. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll just go through and keep responding to the other one. So students can also mouse over the icon, see what type of response this is. So we see it's audio, when the due date would be, and then what the rubric will be based off. So we'll click into question 1. So say what you would like and don't like to do. So for this, we'll just hit record. I'm not going to give too real of an example here, just for the sake of time. Want to just get through all of these, while more so highlighting kind of the features and how things work. So with any audio responses from students, they will see this waveform being picked up. It's a little laggier than I normally see it. I'm assuming just because we might have so many people on here, but it does ensure that student is comfortable that voice is being heard, so that when they submit, there's just nothing worse than a student recording for 5 minutes just to have the teacher say that there was no audio. So just some peace of mind there for the students. Now, when we're done, we would stop recording. And then this one is set up for multiple attempts. So with multiple attempts, you do have that ability to listen, re-record if needed. Otherwise, you're just submitting that attempt. For any single attempt questions, the one difference would be there is no option for the re-record. So we will just submit that. And we will go back to our assessments. And Now we'll do a vocabulary practice. Let me turn off my other, there we go. Okay, so for vocabulary practice, again with audio, we click in, and now this might be the lesson that had just happened last week. So words that you expect the student to know at this point, and then having them form a sentence based on that vocabulary or focus on a pronunciation exercise. So we'll just record here. And for this one, I'll explain my background. So I moved every 2 years growing up in a different state. So I took Spanish 1 over and over and over again. Probably not an excuse. I could probably form a sentence with this one here, but again, just want to stay focused on the features and having some data to submit and grade on here. So we'll submit that one. We'll go back. And now this next example will be one of the timed quizzes. So this will be the first time you're seeing how those timers function, as well as a video response opposed to audio. So we'll come in, go into question 1. Now the first difference for a single attempt question or assessment is that students will see this final warning. So they do try to cheat the system and back out or refresh their page because they want to go to Google Translate. They will get locked out of that attempt, and the teacher does have the ability to unlock to allow the student to go back in. So we'll say, okay. Now, same question that I had asked before. Again, if we do have audio or video, this time to review is not going to begin until we've listened to that entire audio or video. So I'm going to start playing it now because I know I'll be the only one hearing it. And another thing to note too is that we disable the controls.
So I was going to say, I love that anti-Google Translate feature. That's brilliant.
Yes, yep. So we don't want them to be able to rewind, pause, play. Now this 15-second timer begins, and I'm going to let that run all the way up just so you can see what happens when that ends, because it's automatically going to push the student into their response. And I've seen some do 1 second, keeping in mind the audio or video, so that it just begins as soon as the student has heard the entire thing. So now it's bumped me over, I'm on air and recording, and now I would complete the task and stop when I'm done. Now the only option is to listen one more time or submit. So we'll submit that one. Let me go into question 2. So for this one, just an example of having no audio video. Now that time to review begins automatically. This must have been one I was testing out previously and did not add any text there. So students can always click record if they don't want to wait for that time to review to end. And then same thing that you had seen on the last one. So we'll just stop and submit. And then I'll pause. Are there any other questions, Joe?
Yeah, a great question that's just been just come up is, well, once the students have recorded their video, is it possible for them to crop the beginning and the end? For example, if for example they feel a bit hesitant at the start, is it possible to remove some of the start and some of the end, or is it just they have to submit what they've recorded?
Nope, they would have to submit what they recorded.
Okay.
That's as intended. We don't want them to be able to manipulate their response. We want to see where they're at in terms of the knowledge they have.
Okay, that's great.
It's definitely nerve-wracking for students at the beginning, but over time, that's really what it starts to improve their proficiency, because they're constantly being put in kind of this nerve-wracking environment, which does more so mimic if they were traveling to another country, trying to talk to another individual. They can't just pull out their dictionary and sit there and look things up. So
yeah, good point. Thank you. That's great.
Yes. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to flip it back to my other tab here. I'm going to refresh just to see how many people did take me up on creating that student account. Awesome. So we've got 20 students enrolled. I'm going to go to the top, and we're going to go to grading next. So this is where all of those responses will be organized by activity, and where we can grade and provide that feedback for our students. Loading is normally very instant, so I don't know if, again, this might be slowing it down a little bit with this many people on here. Sometimes if I move my computer an inch, it seems to improve the connection. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so we can see that there are some people that are in progress. So this is the same spot where the student had gotten locked out of an attempt, that this would display here with the ability to reset. Obviously with this one, we don't want to reset yet because it looks like the student is still completing it. We do have a slight delay in that in terms of once they are locked out compared to them being in progress. So there's a chance that this student is locked out. We will see that after the 5 or 10 minute delay. We just want to make sure you're not resetting it too far in advance so that students' responses aren't getting wiped before you had a chance to review that. So next, we'll come in and view this activity. And then I'm just going to click in the top left here to hide students without attempts. So we can just focus on anybody who did submit something. And then there's 2 ways to format the grading. Right now I have it formatted by student. So we would have student name, the question or questions below. And then this is just a toggle. So now I can check test, and I can see the questions that they have responded to as well. So I'm going to go back up to mine. And then for this example, guys, I do want to take my headset off because I think this will be a good one for you to all hear. I apologize if it does get a little choppy again.
Sure, that switched over. All right. And Joe, can you just confirm that you're hearing me?
No, we can't for some reason. I don't know why that is because we did test the audio beforehand and it was playing fine.
Let me open up my preferences.
I mean, what
here.
you could do, you clicked on share audio. I was going to say you could try new share and then definitely make sure that the audio is selected, but I can't hear anything.
Is that any better now?
Okay. No, yeah. So,
okay.
Right, so
it started picking up the Zoom audio device for some reason.
Right. So just to clarify in the chat, some people are saying you can hear. Do you mean you can hear the recording that Sam has made? Because I can't hear the recording, but I can hear obviously Sam's microphone. Can you just let me know what you mean? Can you just play the audio again, Sam, and we can just test it?
Yep. So I'll play that right now.
For the sake of time, want to just get through all these.
I'm sorry, I can hear it. I'm sorry. I think I was multitasking. I'm sorry. I apologize. I can hear it. It's fine. It's all. You're good to go. Sorry.
Perfect. So this is where you listen to the response, and then you do have that ability to speed up how you're listening to it. We have retained the tone of voice so that students don't come across as a chipmunk when doing so. So just a little efficiency. I talk pretty fast as is, but I do want to give this example.
Features and how things work. So with any audio responses from students, they will see this waveform being picked up. It's a little laggier than I normally see it. I'm assuming just because we might have so many people on here, but it does ensure that students.
Okay, so I'll pause it there. And then let me slow it down a little bit to show you an example of giving this grade and giving the feedback. So grade, very straightforward, just snapping the sliders over. Again, you could have up to 5 of these. I chose to just add the 2. And then we can also provide some feedback. So maybe we just say, great work. Now what's gotten everybody I've done these webinars, done one-on-one meetings, extremely excited is this ability to give inline feedback, basically simulated feedback while pulling the student's recording in. So I'm going to open up the audio feedback as the instructor. We do provide you with instructions on how to do this. So to provide feedback in line with your student response, unplug your headphones and use your computer speakers, start recording the audio feedback, and then play the student recording while pausing to insert the inline feedback. So I'm going to start my recording. I'm going to play the student's response.
For the sake of time, want to just get through all of these while more so highlighting kind of the features.
Now maybe we'll pause right at this point because we might have heard something that they just mispronounced. Maybe we want to remind them that they need to slow down, or in this case, hey, Sam, you probably should have been speaking in the target language. So now we'll play again.
and how things work. So with any audio responses from students, they will see this.
Now we'll pause that again and we'll point something else out. Whenever we're done, we'll just stop that recording and then we will use that audio. So what I'll do is I'll play back what that would sound like once it's received by the student within their portfolio. I'm going to play the student's response. For the sake of time, I want to just get through all these, well, more so highlighting kind of the feature. Now maybe we'll pause right at this point because we might have heard something that they just mispronounced. Maybe we want to remind them that they need to slow down, or in this case, hey, Sam, you probably should have been speaking in the target language. So now we'll play again and how things work. So with any audio responses from students, they will see this. Now we'll pause that again and we'll point something else out. Whenever we're done, we'll just, okay. I always tend to cut myself off early there as I cut it while I keep talking. So, so once we're done, we'll just submit that feedback. With this type of activity, this one was left where providing the grades is set to immediate rather than waiting for us to publish them to all students to review. So you can see here that it's graded as well as published in green, meaning that student can now review that in their portfolio. Had this been one of the ones where we chose to wait to publish, then this would still show in red as unpublished. And then whenever we're ready, we just click published grades in the top right. So now I'll just arrow over here, and then that'll bring us into our next activity, which looks like that is the multiple choice. So again, we'll hide students without attempts. Looks like I was the only one that had responded to this. One thing I forgot to touch on the last kind of review of the question is that you do have the ability to view the prompt, which definitely comes in handy when you have many classes and a lot of different assessments, just for a quick refresher on what the question was that was being asked. So we'll go on to the next. Kind of for that same reason of being able to view that prompt, that is why most that I've heard from prefer to do the grading by question. That way you know what question you're grading on and you're hearing all like responses from those students. So we'll play this example quick.
And for this one, I'll explain my background. So
we don't need to hear that again. So I'll pause that. We'll give a poor grade because I did not complete the task, and then we will submit. So now, again, we'll just arrow over. Once we get to the last activity, then arrow over, it'll bring us back to the full grading screen. And then we know that we've graded and provided feedback for all the activities that are available to do so at that time. So again, we'll hide. Let's see. Oh, looks like both of these are my responses here. I was hoping to see somebody else's, but we will play the video.
Has heard the entire thing. So now it's bumped me over. I'm on air and recording, and now I would complete the task. And
okay. So for this, I'm just going to give a quick grade, and then I'm going to jump over back to the student portfolio so I can show what that would actually look like as the students go to complete new activities while also having that ability to review any previous ones. So there we go. As I mentioned, that'll bring us back. Now we know that we've completed everything that is possible to complete up to this point. So we'll flip it back to the student view. Let me refresh.
Would it be okay to ask a few more questions, Sam, at this point?
Yes,
is that okay?
please.
So we've had quite a few questions coming in. So one question Fatima asked is about where the data is stored. So Thomas in the chat has said that it's on Amazon servers, but does that mean that it's in the US only, or is it also in Europe? Because obviously that's a big issue around GDPR compliance. I know that you said it's FERPA and COPPA compliance. Mm-hmm. Is it GDPR compliant as well from that point of view, which is obviously a big issue with schools in Europe?
I do not want to give you the wrong answer, so let me confirm, and then we'll have to follow up on that one.
Okay, so but just to be clear then, so is the like the audio content, for example, that students are recording, would that be stored in the States only, or would that be, do you have servers in, say, Europe as well?
It is stored to the cloud.
Yeah, but is the cloud in the States?
I would need to confirm on that. We do have quite a few people in Japan and in other countries utilizing this. So
Okay.
I wouldn't foresee it being an issue.
Okay.
But when it comes to security, I don't feel comfortable giving.
No, that's
information.
absolutely fine. All I would recommend is have a look into GDPR compliance and
Yeah.
make sure that Extempore is GDPR compliant, because there will be some schools that will say, yeah, it might be a great tool, but if it's not GDPR compliant, in other words, if we
Yeah.
can't get access or know where the data is stored, specifically, then there'll be some schools that will say, I'm sorry, we can't allow you to use the tool. So that's a really important, that's a deal breaker basically for schools in Europe, I would say.
Sure. Sure.
So another question is, Audrey has asked, can we download students' audios? Is that possible?
Yes, that is. Sorry, I did not touch on that. So let
That's
me
okay.
go back.
That's fine.
So as you are going about the grading, right here, you do have that ability to download. Students can also download their responses within their portfolio. So I've seen some that they'll have an end of year presentation, and they'll actually pull their best work out and then utilize that for presentations at the end of the year.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's a really, an e-portfolio idea. I think that's really nice. That's great. And all an individual student's audio is all in their interface, isn't it? That's my understanding from what you said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Lovely. Jocelyn asks the question, can a teacher just sign up, or do we need to go through a school? So I suppose what she means is, could an individual who is a teacher sign up, or does it have to be done? Do you have to say, I am from this school, etc.? Does it have to be like a school domain or that sort of thing?
No, you can sign up as an individual teacher. I would recommend starting out with just a light account. It starts with limited features, but then as you kind of complete the tasks, so at the beginning, you wouldn't have the ability to add the timers. Once you've created your third assessment, you do unlock the timer features. So it's our way of just easing you in to how the tool works to complete some of the more basic tasks while then getting more advanced as you go.
Okay, that's lovely. I think it's Laurie Irab asked the question: each student can each student only see their own grade? I presume that would be via their their personal interface. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. So it is just private to that teacher and that student.
Okay, that's lovely. Right. I think we've got a few other questions. Let's just have a look. That's fine. Oh, right. Okay. So we've got the question. In the case of another lockdown and we had to do a mock speaking, would that be possible on this platform? So in other words, like a high stakes test, would it be possible to use Extempore for that?
Yes. From feedback I've heard, I'm not sure what else you would be able to use, just because I haven't seen anything else that's both asynchronous as well as spontaneous.
Okay, that's brilliant. And then we have another question about the rubric. So can we only have one rubric to use to assess a set of questions as a whole? Thinking of using as a general conversation exercise, which presumably Sophia is referring to the GCSE general conversation. So just to be clear then, is it possible to have more than one rubric to use to assess a set of questions as a whole?
So you have one rubric per assessment or per activity, but each assessment or activity can have a completely different rubric.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully, Sophia, that's clarified. If not, please write that in the chat. Let's see if there's any other questions. That's all fine. Thomas is doing a great job, by the way, in answering the questions there and then. Thank you ever so much, Thomas. We had a comment about the audio feedback. People really like that, so that's really good news. How long is the free trial?
So with the light ones, it's free forever. The limitation is it's up to 3 assessments, but you can delete assessments, add new ones. But then what you're losing is that ever-growing portfolio of student work.
Awesome. That's really, really awesome. Thank you. That's really good news. So they could actually get a real taster for how it works for as long as they want. And then if they wanted to have presumably unlimited assignments, etc., then they would then have to pay. And obviously, I'm sure everyone wants to know how much it is, but we can deal with that later. That's fine. Right. Okay. So again, we've got the question: if a mock assessment can work, how can we send the children their individual photo card and role play? So in other words, how could you send an individual student an assignment? Presumably that would be via the link again, wouldn't it? It would be the same issue as before. I think, is that what you mean, Cider? So she's put, if a mock assessment can work, how can we send the children their individual photo card and role play? In other words, their individual assignment. So you could do that via a link, couldn't you? A link for each one, presumably. Is that what he means? I think.
Yeah, well, because
Yeah.
the student would have already been enrolled in the extempore class, you would just let them know that there is now an assessment available. Once they come in, they're going to see it right here within their active activities.
Perfect. Yeah, I can see that Cider has written yes, so that's brilliant. Okay, and Thomas has written that the free trial is until August 31st.
Yes.
Okay, and then oh yeah, and then so Jocelyn's asked, is it 3 assessments per class? Is that right?
It is 3 assessments in total.
In
However,
total,
you can
right.
have as
Okay.
many questions as you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 3 assessments in total, not per class. Yeah. So it's basically just you're giving people the opportunity to have a taste, but if they're serious about it, then they would, which is fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And to clarify too on what Thomas just mentioned. So
yeah, I was just about to chime in.
Yeah, because everyone's in
Thomas,
such a difficult position right now. We are offering unlocked full trial access. So you have access to every feature right out of the gates until August 31st. So a little different than what I mentioned in terms of the light, which those will always be available to kind of ease people in and see who's serious about using it.
Okay, that's wonderful. And there's a really good point here from Sybil, I think it is. I'm watching this on my mobile. When I wanted to sign in as a student, the web page directed me to the mobile app, and the app didn't let me sign in and said I should contact my teacher. So I couldn't sign in as a learner. Presumably, therefore, as the teacher, you'd have to then log in on the browser version and then give the students their login details so they can then log in on the app. Is that right?
Yes. So, I mean, as long as an account was created, so if you're using a mobile device, it does push you to download the mobile app. So because the Chrome browser on the mobile devices is actually different than Chrome browsers on the desktops. Mm-hmm. So that's why it is pushing you to the app. So I guess I'm not clear. Did these individuals download the app and then couldn't get in, or were they trying to?
It sounds well. Let me just read again. So maybe Sybil, you can clarify. But she's written, "I'm watching this on my mobile. When I wanted to sign in as a student, the web page directed me to the mobile app, and the app didn't let me sign in and said I should contact my teacher. So I couldn't sign in as a learner." I'm not sure whether she's tried to sign in using Chrome on her mobile device or whether she's trying to sign in on the app. Is it possible to sign in as a learner on the app, or do you have to do that via the browser as a teacher and then give the students their own login details?
No, so it would be possible to log in. I'm not sure if she created the account first, because the account would have had to be created in order to log in.
Okay. Right, so Sybil says she's downloaded the app. So presumably then she's downloaded the app, she's tried to log in, but it's not allowed to do that. And she's had the message, I should contact my teacher. Does that make sense? Is that what you would? Yeah,
and so let me see, so if I was the teacher in this case, I would probably come in here, and I'm again not sure if Sybil did use the actual name here, but let me see.
Right, so Sybil's not on that list yet, so she's not been able to create an account, I think.
Let's see.
Oh, yeah, okay, so she's saying that she couldn't create an account.
Right, because then that could be the issue.
Okay, so you would recommend that she creates an account using, say, a laptop, using the browser, not the app, and then once she's made an account, she could then be able to log in with those details. Is that right?
Yeah, it definitely works to create the account because what it does is it brings you to your browser on your phone. You should be able to create that account there, and then you'll probably be asked to just log into the app after. That still should work. Okay. So it might, if we can take it offline or just connect individual, I'm sure we can figure out
That's fine. And I can see that someone else, Negin, I think it is, has already said, I downloaded the app too and couldn't log in, same as Sybil. So we've got a couple of, but we can deal with that later maybe, or I don't know, I'm not sure, but right. Sure. So Chris has said, I had the same problem. I solved it by using Chrome to sign up. So basically what you need to do is you need to log in Chrome in the browser. I'm not sure, Chris, can you clarify whether it's Chrome on the mobile or it's Chrome on your laptop, and then you're able to log into the app? That'd be really helpful to know, so that everyone sort of has a troubleshoot, or can, you know, work out what the answer is, as it were. I think that's everything else that we've covered.
Chrome on Android.
Yeah, okay. So Chris is saying Chrome on his Android phone. So probably Chrome on the Android phone is similar to Chrome. I know what you said earlier about Chrome, but isn't Chrome on the Android device basically the same as Chrome on your browser, whereas Chrome on an iPad is a completely different beast? It's basically Safari, but just with a Chrome wrapper, as it were. So I don't know if, Sybil, if you're using an iOS device or an Android device, but it seems to be that you need to, as I said, you need to log in Chrome on a browser and then use the same details on the app. Yeah, using okay, that's it. Yeah, okay. Let's carry on. I think that seems to be the answer. I would say. Lovely, thank you.
In terms of that blended learning as well, this was very much so on the spot, where generally you would go through, make sure students are all enrolled, then start producing these activities. So it's not necessarily enroll and complete something or a high stakes or multiple assessments immediately. So we kind of combined both of those into this kind of one presentation just to see all of that. So I would expect that probably to be handled prior to everything kind of proceeding. So, and then the grade book is the last thing to touch on as well. I will go into some of the group activities. I know we got about 14 minutes left here. So with this, if you do integrate with any of the LMSs, not really a need to use the grade book. If you are utilizing it though, you do have the ability to export to Excel and then import to any other system you might need to. You do have the ability to filter to any of these different classes you might have as well. So let me switch this over to the group activity. So for this one, I'm getting directly into the group activity from a student's perspective. Really the only difference when setting this up compared to an individual activity is just selecting group opposed to individual, and then choosing the number of students that you want to be assigned to each group. So for this one, I chose paired groups. So it automatically then sorts your students into groups of pairs if that's what you choose. If you choose 5 students in each one, automatically it will sort them that way. And then you can always manually move students from one group to the other. If you do want maybe someone who's more proficient working with someone who's less proficient. So for this example, the prompt question is plan a vacation. And then what we found is it does work best if you do assign students with more specific tasks or roles so that they're almost doing a role play throughout this. So student 1, introduce yourself as the travel agent, ask a question at the end of each prompt for the trip planner to answer. Student 2, plan a trip by answering the questions asked by student 1. So I'm going to
that's really nice, isn't it? I really like that. We just had a question from Jocelyn. How do you select the numbers of students if you're going to do this?
Yes. Okay. So let me back that one up. So I'll just show real quick what the setup would look like.
Thank you.
Actually, now that we do have students enrolled, this will be a great example. I don't normally get to do it this way, so this will work well. So let's add, we'll just say group. We'll just leave the due dates. So we're selecting group right here, opposed to individual, and then selecting how many students we want in each one. So I'll do groups of 3. And then you do still have the ability to add the timers as well as single attempt for a group. What that would do is it forces the student to listen to the entire dialogue. So there'd be one button that says play all submissions and participate. So they listen to everything, then they're forced into their response at the end. If they do not submit something, there'll be a red bubble letting you know that they listened but did not complete the task of responding. So let me just hit next. Now the only other piece is adding our prompt. So we'll just say plan the trip, and then we will launch this group. Now all those groups are being assigned. So we'll view those rooms. And there we go. So, and then you can override. So with some of these groups of 3, obviously we have 1 of 2. Maybe we want some groups of 4 So then we can do that as well. So maybe we move this one to room 1.
But you can't drag and drop, is that right?
Not yet. You will.
That would be nice.
Yes, yes. So we'll just move this one as well.
That's really nice. We just got a question, Sam, in the chat. So how do students know to how do students know to carry out their paired assignment? Do they contact each other, or does the teacher send the times for the paired assessment? So presumably by sorting them into these groups, they're then notified. Is that how it works? Or
so yeah, so I would look at the groups. It's like a late stage beta. As soon as the end of August, then all these notifications will be turned on for these groups. So that would be the expectation: is one group member responds, other students get a notification, and then they know that it's their time to go listen and submit their response.
Right. So at the moment, if people were to do the trial, how would that work? How would they know that which pair they were working in?
So yeah, they did it today during the trial. They would know which pair they're in just by going into their student portal, because this group is going to appear just like any other activity, but then it'll have the icon that it is a group. And then these are never viewed as completed activities until the due date hits. So they would always have this as an active activity each time they go in until that due date hits. That is when it would be moved to a completed activity.
Okay. Again, we got a few more questions, if that's okay. So Sybil has asked, can the teacher monitor the rooms? But my understanding is this is not like a sort of like a breakout room when it's all synchronous. This is all sort of like, this is all asynchronous, isn't it? Is that right? Or am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, this is all asynchronous.
Right. Okay. So can the teacher monitor the rooms, or how does that? So all the students are all then recording their answers to. Sorry, because I was sort of following the chat. So for this activity, it's like a paired assignment whereby they are creating a dialogue. Is that right?
Right. It's forming an ongoing dialogue. But then because they are referring to the previous student's response, that's really what creates the ongoing.
I see. So can the teacher go in and monitor what's being recorded, or is there sort of, is there the option to moderate the recordings that have been made, or could it be that you get certain, if a student were to record something inappropriate, would the teacher be able to monitor that, or would it only be once it's all been recorded, as it were, and then the teacher then gets to see everything afterwards? How is moderation an option there?
Yeah, so teacher can go in, access any of the groups at any time, and teacher can also participate in any of the groups. So if students are getting off track, want to get them back on track, or if they do submit something inappropriate, teacher has that ability to delete the student response.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so I can see in the chat people just want to be very clear on how this works. So let's have a look. Okay, so yeah, okay. So Isa, for example, says, so it's not really a live conversation. It's more like responding to each other's pre-recorded message. That's right, isn't it, from what you just said?
Right. And with all this remote and hybrid learning, it's having something where speakers or students do not need another student to be available at the same time, while still having an opportunity to participate and practice the language.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, and as Thomas has written, everything on Extempore is asynchronous, not live. That's great. So Sybil, can I just check with you if you're happy with the answer? So you've said monitor to give feedback. Are you happy with what Sam has said? Is that okay? Yeah, perfect. Okay, I think that's all those questions. That's really nice. Thank you ever so much. Yeah, I've not seen anything like this when it's sort of been managed centrally like that. That's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I know I glanced over this one. Let me play just the first two, just so you guys can get an idea of how the conversation starts, where it goes from there. And then you can see that this was at 10:25. Next response was 4 minutes later. And then after that, it was about 45 minutes after. So I'll just play these. Feel free to keep loading the questions in, and we'll respond to those as soon as I get through these two.
Hi, this is Peter Pan from Neverland Travel Agency. I'm looking forward to helping you plan your dream vacation. To get started, please let me know if you'll be traveling with others and who those individuals are, or if you'll be traveling by yourself.
Okay, so then we go to the next.
Hey, Peter Pan, thanks for helping out. I'm excited to get planning with you to plan our dream vacation here. So I will actually be traveling in a group. I'll be traveling with my family, my mother, my father, as well as my 2 children and my wife.
Okay. And so I do see a few questions. So Catherine, students are organized randomly into those groups, but then you do have that ability to manually reorganize them from there.
A few people are asking whether the trial could be extended to the end of September so they can use this with actual students, you know, as opposed to obviously we're on summer break now, or I would say probably most people are, if not everybody.
So for anyone wanting that, do us a favor and just fill out that form that Thomas has shared, and I'll share it again here as we get to the end. That'll allow just a single member on our team to handle that. We've got a great team, and we love meeting on one-on-ones as well. So it's not all just group webinars. We do like giving that individual focus when needed as well. And if that's something you need, we're more than happy to extend that.
That's lovely. We've got another question from Isa. Will the students have the possibility to listen to the whole exchange again? And could they re-record their own message if they wanted to? They
can always go back and re-listen. Re-recording their response, not currently an option. The group feature was released last October, and we've kind of been waiting for feedback to develop it further to hear what people needed. As soon as COVID hit, that is when everybody started screaming for this and some more features. So that is great feedback. I think that is something we should consider. So let me make a note of that.
That's okay. I mean, out of everything I've seen, I particularly like this last section. I think that's really cool. I don't know of another tool which allows you to have that sort of have the students in different groups, which you can either manually or randomly select, and the way they can have a conversation with each other recorded asynchronously. I think that's a really, really nice feature. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, we've got another question. If that's okay. Does the program assign the students the different role play roles? So presumably with the dialogue, with this dialogue, you would just you've written your rubric, plan a vacation, student 1, etc. So you're assigning what you want the students to do, or student 1, student 2 to say. So then we've got the question: does the program assign the students to the different role play roles? Is that a possibility, or is it just? I mean, so do you choose who student 1 and student 2, etc. is, or is that done by the program?
No, that you would assign who that would be. So like the way I've organized it here, the expectation would be the first student to come in. Now they are the one acting as student 1 compared to student 2.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Because it is a very flexible functionality. So it doesn't even necessarily need to be just a role play. So I do get where the question is coming from, but it could be break down this video as a group, things like that as well.
Uh-huh. And could the teacher be able to download the whole dialogue as one audio file, or just individual files for a dialogue? That would be a nice feature, I think, if you could download all the asynchronous recordings all in one file, so you could then hear the final dialogue, as it were, as one audio file. That would be a nice feature, I think.
Yes, I do not. That is not possible yet. I think that would be a great use of it, though, rather than having each one as an individual file.
It's cool. I can see Audrey had the same question. That's great. So again, we got the question: if I understand the asynchronous feature correctly, would it not mean that we could not use extempore for exam purposes, for example, for A-level, as it has to be an ongoing conversation whereby students need to be in a conversation? So I suppose that if you had let me think. So, well, you couldn't, for preparation for the A-level, you could have 2 students taking part in the that sort of dialogue practice, a little bit like when schools come together and have A-level speaking debates, for example. It would work in the same sort of way, I think. So I don't see, for revision, obviously for not the actual A-level itself, but for revision practice, you could give the students a topic and then you could get them to have a conversation with each other. I think that's my understanding, but just done asynchronously. Right. Okay. Laura has asked the killer question, which I'm sure you're going to cover. Can you go over the costs, which will go, of Extempore, which I'm sure you'll cover before we finish. Right. So again, we've got the question: do the students hear what the other one has recorded? I presume they would in the dialogue format. Is that in the way that you're showing us now? Is that right?
For the groups, yes.
Yeah. So everyone in the group can listen to everyone else's audio. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Right. Okay, I can see Thomas has put the pricing in the chat, but I think it would be helpful if it's possible to display that on the screen, so everyone maybe watching the recording who doesn't have access to the chat. I think that would be good, as we are sort of coming up. Well, we are at 9:30. But if you want to carry on, or if we have more questions, then I'm more than happy to stay on for a bit longer. It's not a problem at all. Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I can see Isa's. Yeah, she's happy with that. It would be as a prep and revision only. So yes, you could use it for that way. Yeah. Lovely. Brilliant.
In the UK, do you guys consider it K-12 and higher ed, or do you call it something different?
So K-12 for us is essentially Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4. So Key Stage 3 is 11 to 14-year-olds, and then Key Stage 3 is 11 to 14-year-olds. Key Stage 4 is 14 to 16-year-olds. So K-12, that would cover that age group, I think. And then for A-level, which would be when they are 17, 18 years old, or well, it could be start of 16 to 18. That will be Key Stage 5. Would that still be regarded as K-12 in the States if they're 17 or 18 years old?
Yes, that would still be K-12.
Okay, so for you guys, so K-12 is essentially right through secondary school education. Is that right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we have kind of the two different models. So with K to 12, it's per class, which generally tends to be for the entire year. So that would be learners up to the age of 18. And then for anybody for the higher ed, 18 and older, they're generally taking 2 semesters of a language, in which case they would be purchasing 2 licenses throughout that entire year. At least that's what we most commonly see. And then for either one, you do have the option to either have the institution fund the licenses, or you can pass that fee along to the student, which is a little more straightforward. When you're passing along to the student, it's just $9.99. So for the 18 and under, that's $10 for the entire year of access. For 18 and over, then those students would most likely be paying that twice if they are taking the class twice throughout that year. With the institution paid one, we do offer tiered pricing based on the number of students. I believe, let me see, I think there is a
would it be okay just to go back to the K-12 option and just to be very clear on how that works? Because most people in the chat, I'm sure, are K-12 or secondary school teachers, I would imagine. So it'd be really good to really clarify exactly how that would work. And am I right in thinking that if an individual teacher wanted to create an account, is that is possible, isn't it? Or does it have to be the school that does it have to be like a school-wide license, or how does that work? Could you maybe just clarify exactly how that would work in?
Yeah. You can obtain this, whether it's a light, just giving it a try, or it's having a paid account as just an individual. Of course, because we have the tiered pricing, the more students that you get involved, the lower the cost per student would be. But regardless of the type of account you have, there is never any cost for the teacher. It is always based on the number of students, whether you are passing that fee along to students or your institution is covering it. Otherwise, we have had some teachers that are unable to get that approval, and then they will actually fund those student accounts as well. So we've seen every way, really.
Okay, so say for example, if a teacher's watching this, we're thinking, right, I'd like to use this with my exam classes. Let's say they had 60 students for their exam classes. How would that work out for price wise?
That's where I think we have the breakdown on this page here. Here we go. So with 60, you're looking at $8.09 per student
per year. Is that right?
For the year.
For the year. Okay. Okay. So as we can see, so 31 to 200 students per year is $8.09. And then, yeah, that's really clear. That's great. Hopefully that's, yeah. So what would that be in pounds approximately? So $8 would be what, about £7, would you say?
I'm not.
I'd imagine, yes, something like that. Yeah. So say about £7, I'd have thought, for per student for from between 31 and 200 students. Hopefully we could all go onto XE currency and work it out, but I would have thought $8 nowadays, considering the current economic climate, it's probably about £7. I'd have thought.
Yeah. So I just plugged 809. It says 6.35 pounds.
Oh, even cheaper. There you go. Okay, so so just over £6 then in that case. Yeah. So yeah, so that's really helpful. Thank you. And hopefully everyone in the chat is now very clear on how much it would cost you. For free, you can have unlimited students, 3 assignments. If you then want to go down the paid route, if you want to then use it with your exam classes or lower down the school, it's just over £6 if you're in the UK, obviously, for 31 to 200 students. I think that's really helpful. So there we are. That's excellent, Sam. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Let's see.
That's great.
Yeah. Keep the questions coming. There's really only 2 other things I can think of even sharing here. So I know the question of accepting different texts. So for anybody who might teach a right to left language, you have that ability to select which one of your classes you would like that to happen on. And then that would be both for your prompts as well as for any student responses.
That's excellent. So we had a couple of people asking about Arabic, so that would be really, really nice. And yeah, that's great. It looks like you've got everything covered from that point of view. That's really, really nice to see. Lovely. We got some lovely comments in the chat as well, thanking everyone for the presentation. That's brilliant.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right.
you.
Okay. So Saida has asked, is there a way where the cost is split between students who pay for themselves and students who the school can pay for them, i.e. PP students, pupil premium students? I would imagine, well, I don't know if that's possible, but I would imagine that the school would have to, in a UK context, in a secondary school, probably the school would have to pay for the lines. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe, Saida, if you contact Extempore, or maybe Thomas can answer that in the chat. But is it possible to split the cost so that you have some students who pay for themselves and some students where the school pays? E.g., we have in the UK a thing called pupil premium. In other words, the school is given extra funding for students who come from sort of impoverished backgrounds, but then it would still be the school that was paying. So I'm not exactly sure on the question, but I'm sure.
So what we can do in that case is provide coupon codes, and then those coupon codes would be provided to those students, but the school would have purchased them, and then other students pay themselves.
Lovely. That's great. Lovely. I think that's all the questions we've got. So it's been a really fantastic webinar. Thank you ever so much. Have you covered everything you wanted to cover?
Yes. This is
excellent. And Thomas, as I said, has done a brilliant job in answering lots of questions, the ones I couldn't either get to in time or what have you. I've been trying to multitask and looking at my 2 screens and everything, but I've tried to keep up with everything. So as a newbie to Extempore, it's been a really fascinating experience, and I think that judging by the feedback, everyone's also really enjoyed it and found it useful. So thank you ever so much for offering this to us, and I'm sure you'll get some sign-ups and people trying out the trial, and then also going for the paid product. So that's amazing.
One quick thing just to show in case they have colleagues that want to try it out, just kind of showing the send a colleague and like sharing a class, kind of that there is that ability.
Yeah, maybe Sam, could you show that if that's possible?
Yes. So
in other words, if you
right
had
now,
a class with multiple teachers, is that the point? Yeah. It seems like that's what the point is. Yeah. Thank you.
Either with multiple teachers, or if one teacher might be creating a bunch of vocabulary while another one's creating pronunciation, and then they send and receive those from each other. So then they're maximizing that content that's been built and then utilizing those with their class of students. And that could be within your institution, or it could be any other teacher that is utilizing Extempore, where you can start sending and receiving. So all that would be here is at the class level. So kind of going back to that Russian doll example, I can share my class with a colleague, which means they have access to all of my assessments. And when I say access, I mean they have them as their own. So they can edit, it does not affect the main source of where they came from. So it does make it their own, and then they can edit and then share with their students. And then you have the same ability to do that at the assessment level as well, so that you're not sharing all assessments in the class, rather just one assessment and however many questions are within there.
So by doing that, just to clarify, do you mean that a teacher can create an assignment, etc., and then send a link to a colleague who also teaches the same class? They would then duplicate the same information to their own account. Is that what you mean? Or can you add a second teacher to the one account?
So those are two questions, but the answer is yes to both. So you can send it to another. Otherwise, you can add a teacher assistant to your account. They would then have the same access that you have, so that they can either help with grading or building content within your actual account.
Perfect. Okay. That's really clear. Thank you. That's really helpful.
Yes.
Lovely. Well, I think we've covered everything from what Thomas has said in the chat, what you said yourself, Sam. That's amazing. So I think we'll wrap it up there if that's okay. So thank you ever so much, Sam, for your time, and obviously for Thomas as well for dealing with the chat. It's been a really interesting session. So what I'll ask you to do now, if it's okay, Sam, is if you stop sharing your screen, and then we'll have everyone appearing on the screen, as it were, if they want to. They don't have to, obviously. And if there are any sort of final comments, if people want to turn on their mics, yes, if you want to turn on your mics and ask a question live now to either Sam or to Thomas, feel free to do so. That's fine. We are still recording, but I'll stop recording in a moment. So if you do have a question that hasn't been covered and you'd like to unmute yourself, then feel free to do so. And it would be nice anyway if you unmute your microphone and we give the boys a very much deserved round of applause. That's right, Stephanie. Yeah. So let's do that right now. Let me turn my video on as well. Actually, talking about. There we are. So great stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. Lovely. So does anyone have any final questions at all that we haven't covered in the webinar?
I just want to say thank you, and thank you for hosting it so beautifully, Joe.
My pleasure. Well, I've done a few of these now, so I'm getting into my stride now. But I think the technology worked okay. Apart from we couldn't hear the audio at one point, but I think you just get used to the format, don't you? I think. But yeah, thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate that. That's really kind of you to say. Thank you. Any other questions at all, or any other comments? Or
yes, please.
Yeah, Saida. Yeah.
Hi, hi, Sam. Thank you so much for this. I think that's a kind of a brilliant sight, actually, in the time that we have now, and it just answers a lot of questions that all teachers kind of struggled with. I know our system differs from Britain to America, and the way we assess speaking is different. I asked a question, but I don't think I've written it well. My question was, if, for instance, we had another outbreak and we had to lock down and we needed to do a mock exam with our student, will that work like a live conversation? Because our assessment is divided into 3 parts, and obviously it's timed, and we have a picture that we have to give the kid to answer a question on, and there is a role play, and there is a conversation questions, all that timed within about 12 minutes. Will that work kind of thing on your platform?
So I know I've talked about a lot of new features. What I've seen it in our demo environment, we're calling it ongoing assessments. That's the best way we've been able to label it. So as I was sharing with you guys and responding as a student, I'm sure you noticed whenever I responded to a single question, it would bring me back to that assessment page, which then gives me the opportunity as a student to pause. Not that I know what the next question is, but now that will be the idea of these ongoing assessments. Is you might say that you have 12 minutes to complete while still having individual based timers per question at the same time. So once they enter, they do not leave until they've answered every question.
But how can we send them, for instance, the picture or the role play? Because obviously for us, they are sent by the exam board, and the kids shouldn't know them until on the day for them to prepare and answer the question, how would we send them a kind of a copy of the photo card or the role play on your site?
So that would just be about the student being enrolled in your class and then you creating that as an activity. Once that happens, they have access to anything you've created. Now, and are you saying that you do not want them to see it until that exam day hits?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
okay.
For
So
the
then you
mock
would just
exam,
schedule
yes.
Yep. So if you just have it set to a future date, students cannot click, they cannot access any information about that activity until that date hits. That is when it will be made available so that they can access it.
Good, yeah.
And then presumably for the mocks as well, you would be given like the example papers from the exam board, and then you would use that for the mock so that you wouldn't, well, unless it's changed from when I did this many years ago, but the exam board will send you example papers that you could then use for the mocks. I think that's right, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's what, so you basically set up the assignments, as Sam said, change the date when it goes live until you know, the moment of the exam. Give them 12 minutes and then away you go. So that would be the way of doing that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Lovely. Any other questions at all?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, well, I think if that's okay, then I'll wrap it up for this evening. Again, thank you ever so much sincerely for everyone's time, for the presenters, for you coming along as attendees. At one point, well, we started off with, you know, 110 people, which was amazing. And yeah, I think everyone has gained a great deal from the session. It's been very, very useful. And as you know, it's all being recorded. It'll be on YouTube. You can check it out. You can send a link to other colleagues in your departments to have a look. And then if you want to then, you know, invest in it and go for, you know, particularly I think GCSE practice, exam practice, then I think it could be very useful moving forward. So there we are. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Joe. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Right. So I'm going to stop recording now.
Bye-bye.